What is up, everyone? Welcome back to the Awaken Catholic Show. I am your host, Nick De La Torre. Today, I have the honor of interviewing the author of Real Presence. What does it mean and why does it matter? Mr. Timothy P. O'Malley. He's a professor at Notre Dame and an author. I think this is his 7th book. This is an awesome book. I loved this book. Super excited to dive into conversation today with Tim O'Malley, Timothy P. O'Malley, that is. And just a reminder, this is not your grandmother's Catholic talk show. It's all coming up right after this. Welcome back to the Awaken Catholic Show, everyone. I am your host, Nick De La Torre. Before we get started, I just want to let you know that if you want to support this show and get access to exclusive benefits, including a daily scripture reflection, daily scripture reflection by yours truly, then visit theawakencatholicshow.com and join the community of saints. And you get all kinds of exclusive perks, and you get to join me daily for prayer and scripture reflection. Like I said, guys, for the general Awaken Catholic capital campaign called Kickstart the Mission Campaign, we are 50% to our goal. We're actually over 50% to our goal. Super excited about that. Make sure to visit awakencatholic.org to learn more about our campaign. You can partner with us. You can join a patron community for one or several of the shows like mine. And like I just told you, you can visit theawakencatholicshow.com to join my patron community. Also, make sure to check out our app, theawakenapp.io, or search for it in your app store of choice, the Apple App Store, Google Play Store, and just from a web browser, theawakenapp.io. It's a great and growing community, people all over the world who want to grow closer to the Lord and closer in community, sharing thoughts, sharing life. There's a prayer library, a music library. There's all kinds of stuff. Literally, it just goes on for days. I don't know about that, but there's a whole lot. And so make sure to check out theawakenapp.io. Without further ado, Mr. Timothy P. O'Malley, welcome to the Awaken Catholic Show.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I'm thrilled. I was sharing with you before we started, I love the Eucharist. I love Jesus. So, I love the Eucharist because it is him. And I rarely read, though, stuff that is as thought-provoking to me about the Eucharist from a theological and philosophical standpoint. It just got me, excited all over again to learn new things. And it's not to say that you created new things about the Eucharist, because then that would very likely be heresy. This is not that, though. This is just really cool perspectives and insights into the Eucharist for reflection and for edifying your own spirituality, your own relationship with Jesus in the Eucharist. So I'm really excited to talk more about your book and your process as you went into this. But before we do that, Tim, I just want to learn about you, man.
Yeah, I think everyone does in the end, including my spouse. I do. I'm trying to figure out who I am. So.
Brilliant.
I'm Tim O'Malley. I work at Notre Dame. I do things in digital education. I grew up in East Tennessee, so I'm not a native of the Midwest. The Midwest is very flat and very cold, things that I don't desire out of life. But I grew up in Knoxville area. It was pretty nominally Catholic. There weren't very few Catholics there, under 2%, but I was a nerd. So I would read the catechism on the bus on the way to school and discovered I actually kind of like theology. And so I went to the University of Notre Dame, where I did theology and philosophy, but I fell in love particularly with liturgical theology or sacramental theology, and then went on to get a doctorate because a lot of self-hatred, I think. I wanted a doctorate and wanted to sort of destroy myself. So I did that. I actually studied at Boston College, so lived in the Northeast for a while. And then 11 years ago, moved back to Notre Dame where I teach and do research. I got 2 kids, 8 and 4, and my beloved wife, Kara. We live in the South Bend area. It's a great place to live and grow up. For the kids, I guess I'm still growing up.
Aren't we all?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you grew up in an area that was nominally Catholic. What kind of drew you initially to the did you say you were reading the catechism on the school bus? What? That's not like the average practice for school bus riders.
Yeah, I wanted to be very unpopular. I was cultivating. No. So what drew it, youth ministry in Knoxville, Tennessee was extraordinary. And so our youth ministry was like 75 or 80 kids at our parish. We'd get together, we'd study together, pray together. My diocese went to a monastery every year where we did classes in theology and philosophy. While at the same time we prayed with the monks and did other fun things. So I think for a lot of it, for me, was just a culture of those who did take their faith rather seriously, intellectually and such. And so I jumped into the catechism because it was recommended to start reading it. And that's actually where I fell in love, not so much with the catechism, which I do love, but with those footnotes, right? So I was like, Augustine, Teresa of Avila, who are these people? I want to know more about them.
That's beautiful. Yeah. So that was high school for you.
Yeah, it was early high school when I listened to a lot of early 90s country music on the bus on the sort of back roads of East Tennessee.
What a grace that would have been. I mean, I remember being on the bus in high school, and that theology is not what was on my mind. I was probably, in the heat of a reaction to the changes that had happened for me hormonally and the changes that were happening in all those around me hormonally, if you know what I'm saying.
Yes.
So that's where my head was probably at, that and, what's the latest cool rock music or something. Well, that's amazing. I mean, when you look back, like, why... I don't know. I'm just trying to imagine being in that headspace. Like, let me pick up a catechism. Like, even if you were curious, I don't know. It's amazing. Like, your youth ministry program must have been incredible, I guess, from what you're describing.
Oh, it was. Yeah. It's also, you grew up in the South, so religion was part of the environment. I mean, we all were looking at each other too. There was romance in the air, but we were, I think it was just a culture that was okay to talk about religious things and read religious things. Be Catholic was already kind of weird. So to go one step further and be, sort of read the catechism and think about stuff wasn't too weird, or at least weirder than what other people were doing, right? So everybody was reading their devotionals or, going to church or school earlier to go to church, to talk about the Bible. So it was kind of in the air. It's one of the gifts, I think, of the South is that there is still this kind of evangelical zeal in the air, Catholic or not Catholic.
That is super cool, and definitely not what I grew up with. So very, very interesting. And then, so you had you were part of an effective youth ministry program. You started getting really interested in theology as you were reading the catechism and the annotations and discovering, this is from this saint or whatever. So some of that can be on the more intellectual side. Was there a point in your life where, like, your heart, like where you encountered the person of Jesus in a pretty profound way? That does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I mean, it was always together. I think it was one of the gifts of being it was one of the gifts of doing like monastic things. So, to encounter Christ is made manifest in the scriptures, in the Psalms, in getting up early in the morning and praying. When I went to Notre Dame, here I was 18, 19, 20 years old, I found a ritual, a regiment that united the intellectual and the spiritual life together, daily mass and regular participation in the Eucharist, which formed me to see the presence of Christ in the Blessed Sacrament, to see him as someone I entered into communion with. I spent 3 years in the undergrad seminary. I wasn't good at it, I tell my undergrads, because I was always wanting to date. So I figured out that was not, I was bad at seminary, but good at dating. And, but one of the things we did is we'd get up really super early to go do Eucharistic Adoration. So I met our Lord in the Blessed Sacrament when I went to Fisher Hall Chapel at 2:00 in the morning on a snowy day. And there he was. And so in some ways it wasn't like extreme moments of affect. I'm Irish. I felt most at home in New England, where people don't touch each other or smile. But at the same time, I think it was this ritual of prayer, of entering into the life of prayer every day, somewhat mundane, that actually taught me to look for Jesus to encounter him in all these dimensions of my life.
That's beautiful. Yeah, and I can totally relate to what you're describing about the monastic influence, or the influence that can have on your life to live a monastic, prayer routine or something. Like when I was in college, I had, my conversion experience, and for a brief time, I was very seriously discerning priesthood. And in that time, I went on a discernment retreat with the monks in St. Meinrad Seminary, and living amongst them, praying with them the way that they pray made such an impact on me at such a deep level that it's kind of changed my whole spiritual disposition forever. Even though I never became a priest, like as a man, as a husband, as a father, like I'll never be the same. I'm better for it, having been influenced by that, and it makes the faith so real and so deep. So I totally agree with you and can relate to that. Before we move on, I want to move on now to the Kerygma speed round. Are you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Okay. Question number 1. Who is Jesus to you?
Jesus is, this is going to sound, again, overly intellectual, but the Word made flesh, right? So that's everything. He is the one who became flesh, who took up everything that it means to be human, my life, your life, joys and sorrows. God became man. And in that, he is therefore the Lord who understands my life.
I love it. That's beautiful. Question number 2. What's your elevator pitch for a life with Jesus?
My elevator pitch is that life is hard. So this is, again, sounds dark and terrible. This is where I'm an Irish Catholic person. Life is hard, and we need to find meaning in our lives, right? And the meaning that we need to find in Catholicism became a person, right? The Word became flesh, logos, a meaning. So not only is an abstract meaning proposed to us, but it's a person to be in communion with who is the answer to all our needs. That's the pitch.
I love that.
It's a long elevator.
You get to choose the height. Question number 3. Elevator pitch specifically for life with him as a Catholic.
Yeah, Catholicism is not a religion, as one of my favorite theologians said. It's all humanity united together around Jesus, right? So it's every man and woman invited. It's not just another religion. It's not a denomination. It's the invitation of all men and women into the peaceful union of the supper of the Lamb. And so, it's all of us. Whether we want you there or not, or whether you invited.
That's great. I love that. Those are amazing answers. Beautiful. Okay, so now let's go back to your story. So you fall in love with theology and learning and stuff. How do you? What was then? What took you from that age range and where your passions were developing to kind of discerning the direction of your life as an academic and as a writer and a professor? Like what does that look like for you?
Yeah, so I then studied theology and philosophy at Notre Dame. In some ways, the discernment was always communal. I had a professor who in my sophomore year said, you should do this in graduate school. And so I said, that's what I'll do. And a lot of like the early stuff was just, I'm a very practical person, right? So you need a job to pay for a house, which you're going to hopefully live in with people you love, right? And so I sort of just said, all right, well, it's time to start doing this. And I did love studying. I loved research. I loved writing. But in particular of interest to me became, well, how do you communicate this to various audiences? So I did a PhD in theology and education at Boston College, which was a degree that was designed to help me explain this stuff to people and to think about it with people and to think at the highest levels, but also so that you could explain it to someone in a parish. And I think that's where the big discernment came along to me, is I wanted to be the kind of theologian that, yes, I could write articles that no one cares about in the normal world, but I also wanted to somehow find a way to communicate that which was good, true, and beautiful to various audiences. I wanted to reveal the sophistication of Catholicism, but I didn't want sophistication to mean impenetrability, and how that often turns people off rather than invites them in.
Yes, totally agree with that. It's so easy when we get excited about the things we're learning and the things that we want to help other people learn, information. It's so easy to get excited in our Catholic hot tub and just think to ourselves, doesn't it feel good to be right? And then it's like it becomes this major barrier to entry for anyone else to enjoy the water with us. So I love your concern to handle things that way and to become that kind of theologian and writer, and it came across in this book, which I highly recommend to everyone, but we'll get to the book shortly. Cool. So now you're at Notre Dame. You told me you've been at Notre Dame for 11 years.
Yep.
That's a lot of years. You don't even look old enough to have been working somewhere 11 years. You look my age. I guess I am old enough to have worked somewhere 11 years. Wow, I'm old.
Sorry to awaken you to your own mortality.
Oh gosh, no.
Yeah, no, I'm 40. I'm almost 40.
Okay, well, you're a great 40.
Yeah.
So, in your time there, have you written all 7 of your books while there at Notre Dame?
Yes, I have. Yeah. So.
Okay, I'm gonna look up your Amazon listings for all of these. Is there a better place you want us to look for your books?
No, I'm fine with that. I mean, it's great because as long as it's not like my shopping cart.
No, I wondered if you wanted to promote the Notre Dame bookstore or something. I don't know.
Oh, right. Yeah, that's a good idea. But no, that's fine. Amazon is a much better algorithm.
That's fair. Okay. Very good. So before we get to your book, there's been a lot of contention recently with President Biden's decision to pull us out of the 20-year war and all this stuff. And, there's a lot of division happening in our country. And it's just it's getting ugly. And of all things, the administration recently declared that on top of the exit from Afghanistan, on top of this thing and that thing, the vaccines and whatever, now they're trying to make it so that nobody can watch the Catholic Weird Stuff segment from the Awaken Catholic show. And, here at Awaken Catholic, we're just we're going to put a stake in the ground and say, no, this is where we draw the line. You can't do that to us. So let's roll the thing.
Catholic Weird Stuff. Why do they do the things that they do? Let's learn some Catholic Weird Stuff. It's so weird.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Awaken Catholic Show's Catholic Weird Stuff segment, where today we're going to be exploring, as always, a little tidbit. Is that a thing people say, Colleen? A little nugget of the church's glorified, beautiful vision of truth and revelation of truth, rather. And sometimes some of that stuff can be pretty weird. And that's what we're going to dive into today. Today, Mr. Timothy O'Malley, Professor Timothy O'Malley, author Timothy O'Malley, is going to be talking to us about the saints of the Black Death. Now, Professor, can I call you Professor?
Absolutely. In fact, I demand it.
There is a movie that I love called The Black Death. Have you seen it?
I haven't. No.
You should look into it. It is incredible. And if you're going to take this conversation the direction I think you're going to, I think you will love that movie. So talk to us. Why are the saints of the Black Death something worth talking about?
Yeah. So during the plague, so the Black Death, which was really only 3 to 5 years, but the whole plague, which was a 400-year phenomenon, there was a sort of intercessory prayer around some of the big saints. The church was terrified. We often think oh no, during COVID, it was the first time the church canceled stuff. Actually, stuff was canceled all the time during the Black Death. Lent was partially canceled. Carnival was canceled during plagues. But the saints were key. And there was all sorts of intercessory prayer to saints during this time and love of specific saints. Saint Sebastian, who died with arrows, was a saint of the Black Death, not because he had the plague, but because the image for the plague were arrows. And so since he died by arrows, he would save us from the plague because he had arrows. Or Saint Roch, or Saint Roch, who had the plague and apparently sort of was a great intercessor to heal us of our illness and bring people back together in communion. And then, of course, the Blessed Virgin Mary. So a lot of the images of the Assumption that we have came about during the Black Death. So the Black Death was not just a period of time of sickness, but it was like this reform and renewal time in the church where we had more saints come about, the change of art, and particularly the way that saints were depicted, including Mary. Mary began to be depicted as a swooning mother who dealt with all this degree of suffering in her life. And so a lot of our devotional life emerges from the Black Death. So next time you're in an art museum and you see 700 images of Saint Sebastian getting shot with arrows, this is actually an image from the plague.
Yeah, that is powerful. I mean, there's so many interesting witnesses to the truth and to faith and to goodness that came out of that whole time frame in the midst of a very dark and challenging time in history, and that's of course when the church always thrives at its best is in the face of terrible calamity, because it's when people realize, oh, you mean I'm not God and I need a God. And I think as things are, gosh, I know people right now that are like in the year 2021, like, oh, it's never been worse, Jesus is coming soon, and I'm like, it's never been worse. Really,
No.
And so I think that a lot of those examples, like the ones you listed off, it's just such a powerful and convicting reminder of our own need for God, but then are also like a call to arms too, of like, hey, in a terrible situation, what would you really do? And that's one of the things, actually, going back to the movie I brought up, it's a fictitious story, but based in the Black Plague scenario, where the people basically are, I think that it's been a few years since I've seen it, but I think that the people throughout the land believe that the Black Plague is a result of witchcraft, and they end up kind of all turning to the witches or the witch that is kind of in charge or whatever for salvation from it. And then, there are these incredible and very powerful tear-jerking examples of martyrdom from these soldiers who were, on a journey to like take down this witch. It's fictitious and it's very intense, but the depiction of being steadfast in the faith, it's really powerful, and honestly inspiring, as challenging as some of the scenes are to watch. So definitely recommend that. But yeah, thanks for bringing this topic to mind here. We should never look at the times we're in right now and think like this is as bad as it's ever been. Like, it's not.
That's right. Yeah, if COVID lasts 400 years, let's have a conversation. And if it kills 95% of your town, otherwise, take a breath, wait a little bit. I promise whatever like fun sporting event that got canceled, like you'll live.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And obviously, there are some things that it's like, well, it sucks that a lot of people didn't get to walk for their graduation, but it could have sucked a lot more if you were around during the Black Plague and 95% of your class was dead, So
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Beautiful. Okay. Tim, let's talk about your book, man. This is
great. Let's do it.
So what, we recently, I did an interview with Deacon Harold Burke Sivers, and on that interview, he and I, by the end of the episode, we decided to declare an unofficial year of Eucharistic Renaissance. And this was just a few episodes ago. And I just got so excited when, I think it might have been your publicist or someone that sent this book to us. And when I saw what this was about, I was just like, this is perfect. So what inspired you to make the topic what it is in the real presence? What does it mean and why does it matter?
Yeah, so what inspired me was my publisher told me to write it. So that was the first thing. It was a sort of a requirement. But no, I was interested in the topic. The inspiration comes from this Pew study that comes out pretty regularly and says that most Catholics don't believe in the Eucharist or Eucharistic presence of Jesus. Now, there are problems with that study. In fact, problems. My institute at Notre Dame, we're going to be running a study with a group out of Georgetown that would actually analyze what Catholics believe about the Eucharist. We want to know sociologically exactly. But nonetheless, I'm a teacher. I have taught undergraduates for years. I know that they don't always know everything. So I wanted to offer them a kind of initiation or a possibility to understand the Eucharist in real presence in a way that they could understand it, in a way that would answer the question of their life. What does it mean and why does it matter? That's the subtitle. So what does it mean that Catholics believe in real presence and transubstantiation? And why does that belief not just a matter of weird philosophical mumbo jumbo, but actually has import on what it means to be a human being in the 21st century?
Yeah, and you actually talked about some of the concerns you had with the studies that have come out from Pew Research. Early in the book, you mentioned that. Do you want to kind of articulate, because those are numbers that get thrown around all the time, whether in homilies or speakers or whatever. And I thought that your insight about what some of those concerns were made a lot of sense. Do you want to share a little bit about that?
Yeah, so first off, the language of the Pew study doesn't actually ask the precise doctrine of Catholicism to begin with, so it kind of gets it wrong, and it gives the wrong options on the other side. Second, belief in real presence and the capacity to articulate belief in real presence are different things. So as I explain it all the time when I've been talking to people, like, why are our parishes often full of people who go to a place with terrible preaching and music that makes you want to sometimes like eliminate your sense of hearing? The reason is because they believe something's there, right? So we need a survey that allows people to put in their own language what they believe, right? So What do they believe? They may not know the doctrine, right? My grandmother didn't know the doctrine of real presence in any substantial way, but she was a regular mass. She would regularly attend mass, and she knew that the host was Jesus. She couldn't have explained transubstantiation if you paid her a lot of money. But so I think we have to be very careful with taking a survey like this and saying like, oh, so it's only 30% of Catholics believe in real presence. That's just not clear from the data itself.
That's super interesting. And it makes me think about, too, in other areas of our lives, there are things that we're perfectly okay not having a clue about the inner workings and just still making it a part of our life. Like, I am deeply in love with my wife, who is also my high school sweetheart. Like, I'm still freaking crazy about her. I have no idea metaphysically the inner workings of the person. Like, we know what the church tells us, those of us who've looked into it and whatever, but there's always that whatever amount that we might not understand until the beatific vision, which is when we see God at the end of time and on the last day. And, you know, like, there are inner workings of who my wife is, what she is, that I do not have a clue about, and I could not care less because I'm in love with her. And I think that there's something to be said about believing in Jesus, loving Jesus, even the Eucharistic Jesus, the one that is consecrated at Mass, and you can believe in that and love it and not understand the metaphysical, the theological, and I think that that's something that is worth talking about, because we just assume like you have to understand it to say that you believe it. I don't know if that's true.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And so I think the real problem, I'm all for teaching Eucharistic doctrine. I literally do this with my life. But if we suddenly perfectly taught the doctrine in every parish throughout the United States next year, we wouldn't suddenly have 90% increase of those who would go to weekly Mass, because the dilemma for affiliation or disaffiliation, belonging to the church or not belonging to the church, is a matter of love, right? Do you love the one who's made present? Not only do you understand the mechanics or how he's made present, as much as I think that matters. And in fact, the more we believe that and understand it, the more deeply we enter into the mystery, in the same way that with your spouse, right? Your wife, right? Like, you couldn't then say like, oh, well, I love her, she's a mystery, I don't even have to ask her how her day was, or right? Like, there's no point in getting to know her more because she is to me love, right? Right. Like you would ask questions, you would seek deeper understanding, but nonetheless, we should be careful with the data. Catholics have to look like we know what we're talking about. And so we can't turn this Pew study into an idol, which I think is sometimes the risk.
Yeah, and I think that the other concern there with the verbiage of the Pew study, which you're kind of also pointing to here is the idea of believing it really becomes the body and blood of Jesus. Like, what does that sentence even mean, right? Because you're highlighting in the book, it doesn't physically become human Jesus flesh, and it doesn't physically become human blood or human Jesus blood. It becomes in its substance, and it's in what it is, not physically, not the what's called the accidents. And so, like, if you're asking people, do you believe it's the real flesh and blood of Jesus Christ? And in their minds, they're thinking, well, it's not literally human flesh. And then they answer no on the question. It's like, well, that doesn't mean what everyone thinks it means.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's the thing is, like, even Catholics who are would otherwise describe themselves as profoundly Orthodox get this wrong, right? I've been on radio shows, of course, and TV shows, not this one, I should say, which is the best. But I've been on those shows where they've been like, oh man, if we could only show people what's really happening during the Eucharist, like if we could show them a Eucharistic miracle and say, this is secretly what's happening during transubstantiation, then everyone would believe. And I was like, no, that's the whole point of transubstantiation. The Eucharistic miracles are a secondary miracle, inviting us to recognize the personal presence of our Lord. But the whole point of transubstantiation is that what looks like bread and wine really still matters, that it looks like bread and wine. God feeds us with his very presence within himself in a way that we can receive it. I don't eat human flesh. I don't drink blood. I do eat bread. I do drink wine. And in that, our Lord feeds us in a way I can receive it. So the subtlety of transubstantiation is so beautiful. The church wants God to be able to feed us, or wants to understand what the Eucharist is in a way that recognizes the radicality of Jesus' words. This is my body and this is my blood. Mm-hmm. But also in a way that we can receive it in light of the whole scriptural tradition, which matters, right? So getting this doctrine right is key if we're to evangelize in some ways, because we can't just tell people, like, come to Mass and have human flesh and blood.
Right.
That's not attractive.
Yeah, and it can actually end up, if someone tries it and misunderstands what to expect, it can actually lead them to really shut off to the idea of faith at all, or specifically the Catholic faith. I personally know someone who was very dear to me and was on a journey towards Catholicism, and in their lack of readiness or formation, they were at Mass on their own one time, and they went up to receive the Eucharist. And they, because of the way things had been talked about, they literally went up expecting it to taste like human flesh and taste like human blood. And when it wasn't, they never went back to a Catholic church again.
Yeah, that's right. So we have to use, the gift of our church is we have faith, we have reason, we have a 2,000-year theological tradition that makes sense of this. We cannot just use sound bites. We have to do the hard work. It's hard work, but it's worth it.
Amen. I totally agree. And I love also, you pointed out the words of Jesus at the Last Supper, this is my body, this is my blood. And I think there's so much power in anything Jesus says, like he's the Word made flesh, and it was through the Word that everything was made. And literally in the Genesis account of creation, you have God speaking things into existence, the Word spoken, right? And all of this kind of points to this idea that when God says something, it just is. And you don't have to like it, you don't have to believe in it, it just is. Now, it's better for you to believe in it because it just is either way, kind of like gravity. And I just think that those words, when you contextualize who this man Jesus was at the Last Supper, and he says those words, it's like staggering. I mean, it really is like time stood still in that moment at this first instance of consecration. It's really powerful stuff.
Yeah, he promises to dwell among us, right, to the end of the age. And this is how, linked to the whole history of the Passover, the whole history of God providing manna from heaven, right, has chosen to dwell among us in this particular way unto the end of time as an act of supreme love, right, of dwelling, of presence. And so, yeah, that was St. Thomas's point. He didn't want to figure out, St. Thomas Aquinas, who is often credited with transubstantiation, he wasn't interested in just philosophy for its own sake. He wanted to understand what Jesus meant when he said, "This is my body and this is my blood," and he wanted to take Jesus at his word. So, it's a stunning doctrine. It really, especially for those of us getting out of COVID, and a lot of us are coming back to churches, and maybe we were away for a while, to come back and be in the presence of our Lord is everything.
So what can we do, because there's so much in this book. If you're a theologian, you'll get something out of this book. If you're just a common, pew sitter, you'll get something out of this book. What do you think there is, if you are that person, what could be a next step as you're trying to dive into a deeper understanding or a deeper faith in the Eucharist?
Yeah, the Eucharist is, in some sense, a doorway that has as many entrances as possible, right? There's art, poetry, literature, music, the devotional life and prayer. There's the lives of the mystics. There's the lives of the theologians who've spoken about the Eucharist. There's sacred scripture. What I would say is find a doorway in to understand more deeply. If it is the poetry of a poet you love, start there. If it's altar pieces and art, start there. If it's your favorite sort of worship music, start there, but start somewhere. And I think the gift of the church is that while the doctrine is key and we should understand it, and maybe I think my book does some dimension of helping us understand that, we have to then dive more deeply into the whole tradition, into the saints, and to really start to understand the whole Eucharistic treasury of the church. If we think about it as a treasury, it's the beautiful gems, the poets and the artists, the authors, the thinkers, the lovers, the Eucharistic lovers that we can learn from.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And that to me is if you're not developing a personal relationship with the Eucharistic Lord, the Eucharistic Jesus, like, you're really not understanding what the point is to the Eucharist. And I think that is, partially this is at the fault of kind of decades of terrible sacramental preparation, where the sacraments just kind of become these milestone moments and, these rites of passage and whatever, and almost secularized in a sense. Like, I remember for me, my first Holy Communion, I was totally oblivious to the fact that I was literally receiving divinity, the God of the universe, the one who created and saved me. Like, I had no idea. I was in second grade. I was probably more interested in, like, what video game was I going to play when I got home, or what toy. And I just think that we can, in our lives, even as adults, we can understand, like, oh yeah, that's God and I'm receiving him. It's a sacrament, yippity skipping freaking doodah. Like, we might not understand the gravity that, I wish I could have been around when Jesus was walking around. Well, like, you're around now when Jesus is here now, still physically, like, he's here in the sacrament. Like, it's almost just as profound. Like, it's huge, and he's waiting for you in the tabernacle. Like, he's waiting for you to just come be with him. He's waiting for you to come to Mass and receive him. And it's that relationship that, if we aren't cultivating that intentionally, we're really missing out on a huge part of the Christian walk.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's the key, really, to the end is, find if you want to start this and start falling in love in this way, pick an extra day, one day per week if you can, to go to Mass, do a daily Mass, find 30 minutes to be in the presence of the tabernacle, 30 minutes or an hour or whatever you have, 15 minutes. Cross yourself when you pass by your local parish church. Understand that you're meeting a person, and it's not an idea or a thought, and it's a person who wants you to spend time with him. And so start small, and you may find your way there.
Yes, that is great advice. I love that. Was there anything, as you were developing this book, was there anything that you found yourself kind of going deeper on a personal level?
Yeah, I would say that one of the things that personally for me was just this whole book was written during COVID, and particularly during the times in which there were not public masses for the most part.
Oh.
I think I finished the book a couple of days after Pentecost, so I had perhaps just come back to Mass. That was the first day our diocese was open. And I think for me, desire for the Eucharist was key, and remembering desire. I think all of us, even those of us who are devout Catholics who really understand the gravity of the Eucharist, can, by mundaneness of routine, forget the gift of what we're receiving. So it was a for me, as I was writing, I was like, oh, I'm relearning a desire to receive Jesus, and to become like him, to receive him, to become like him, to long for Sunday Mass. So I think in a lot of ways it was a transformative book for me personally, because it brought me back to that original Eucharistic amazement that I had when I was 7 or 8, and that I had lost by not sort of pure sinfulness. It wasn't like I'm engaged in like killing of puppies and mafia sort of racketeering. I go to Mass regularly, but that it's important sometimes to take a retreat and to have desire again for the beloved. And I think that's kind of what COVID was for me, and the book personally brought me back to that desire for the beloved.
That's beautiful, man. That's so beautiful. It's something to strive for. And you heard from Tim earlier there, folks, that just start small. Find 30 minutes out of your week that you can go spend time with the Lord as you're passing a Catholic church. Do the sign of the cross, acknowledging that Jesus is there. Tim, where can people find you? I saw that you got a Twitter account. Are you active there?
I'm active, though. You'll find very little intelligent conversation, just children. Funny things my children do, and reacting to Notre Dame sports events. So.
Okay. Where would you like people to find you?
No, you can find me on Twitter, Timothy P. O'Malley. You can email me at tomalley@nd.edu. You can find me at Notre Dame's website and other places. I'm available and open to chatting. If you want to email me or give me a phone call, I'll even call you back. Ooh. I know how to use a phone. I know, I can't text, but I can actually call. So
brilliant. Well, folks, I highly, highly recommend checking out Real Presence, What Does It Mean and Why Does It Matter by Timothy P. O'Malley. It's got something in it for everyone. It is deep, it's profound, but it's also accessible. And the man himself has made himself accessible. He just gave you his email address. So, I mean, gosh, it doesn't get better than that. Timothy, thank you for joining us today. Really appreciate your time and having this discussion. We're here in the midst of our official, unofficial Eucharistic Renaissance at Awaken Catholic, and couldn't be happier that we made this topic and your book a part of that journey. So thanks for joining us today, Tim.
Oh, yeah. Thanks for having me. It's been great.
Brilliant. And ladies and gentlemen, if you want to support the work of this show and join the patron community for this show called Community of Saints and get all kinds of exclusive perks and benefits, including a daily scripture reflection and some prayer time and some fun with yours truly, then visit theawakencatholicshow.com to get in on that action today. And also, that's one of the many ways in which you can join, you can contribute to the Kickstart the Mission campaign here at Awaken Catholic. There's also a number of other patron communities you can join that also contribute to the Kickstart the Mission campaign, or just a one-time gift. Whatever you can do, we have passed the 50% mark. Help us get to the finish line. Visit awakencatholic.org to help us with that. And it's been awesome having Tim here on the show. And I have been Nick De La Torre. This has been the Awaken Catholic Show. Before you go, I just need you to know that Jesus loves you.